All right, everyone, welcome back. Who feels lucky and want to get into some casino gambles? So this week, a lot of them are reporting. You've got MGM, which you guys know I have in my portfolio. You've got Wynn, you've got Caesars, and then on Friday you have DraftKings, which isn't really a casino, but it is sportsbook related. So the cool thing is that we have a lot of insight already into what they're going to be reporting. So this is a great time to actually do some option plays on them. Often I like to take a little gamble on them because, for those of you that are not aware, you kind of get a lot of what's going to be reported from two companies that always report earlier. That is Boyd Gaming, which has a lot of US-based casinos, and you have the Las Vegas Sands that has Macau casinos. So you can use Las Vegas Sands to tell you what Wynn's going to be doing, and you can use Boyd Gaming to kind of have pretty good insight into what MGM and Caesars are going to be reporting. So let's take a quick look at the industry. Are there still like opportunities out there, and are there any good options plays? Alright guys, I'm going to show you how I do my research when I want to bet on the earnings for a stock. Now we're going to look at casino stocks because the earnings are this week, so you guys will be able to look tomorrow and figure out if you find a good opportunity, but this works for every other type of stock. Like tomorrow Corsair is reporting, you could do that the exact same thing by looking at Logitech and other companies. Alright, so the reason why I like to do this research is that we're kind of like investigators. We're looking for clues that are going to help us figuring out what's going to happen with the stocks. Now, we're not going to be right 100% of the time, right? The goal is to be right enough times that our profit is going to be higher than our losses, right? So we're going to be ahead and our portfolio is going to grow. So what I like to do is look at comparables, right? So for example, MGM, the closest comparable is Boyd Gaming. For Wynn, the closest comparable is going to be Las Vegas Sands. So what we find in those earnings are mostly going to apply to the companies that are about to report. So Boyd Gaming, I pulled up the Q2 and Q3 earnings, and what we want to do is sequentially between Q2 and Q3, how are they doing and how does that compare to what the analysts expected? Now personally, I expect a very strong Q3 for the casinos, especially US based, and then for Macau based casinos, I expect them to actually struggle because they had a lot of problems in the past quarter, right, with China clamping down on COVID with the Delta variant and all of that. So I'm actually kind of second guessing now my thesis for the US based casinos based on this research that I'm about to show you. And so if we look at Boyd Gaming, in the previous quarter, right, this is Q2, they had generated 893 million in revenues. And if you can see the breakdown here, we're not going to look into it, but you can also see that their actual margin was 45.8% total for the entire company. And well, how does that compare with this quarter? Now, if you go to Q3, you'll see that they generated 843 million in revenues, and their margin went down to 42.8%. That's not good, right? Year over year, of course they're going to be growing. Right? Last year, everything was closed. But sequentially from quarter to the next quarter, it's really not that great, right? So you can actually see here in 2021 versus 2019, they do see 2.9% growth in their revenues. Remember last year, right, was completely shut down, so their revenues were almost nil. Well, the fact that sequentially the revenues were down in my book is fairly weak. However, what really matters is how does that compare to what the analysts were expecting? Because in the end, right, if you see a big beat, usually the stock tends to go up, and then if you see a big miss on the revenues and EPS, the stock tends to go down. So even though they lost 50 million, well, if you go to Google or you can go to Yahoo, Earnings Whisperer, doesn't matter. As long as you can find like what the analysts were expecting, you're going to get a pretty idea of how they did. Right? So you can go in Google, type in the ticker symbol, and then earnings, usually right here or sometimes down here, you are going to see what I'm talking about. So previous, for this quarter, Q3 2021, on EPS, based on the analyst expectations, they beat 3.33%, and then on the revenues, they beat 0.40%. So even though the company didn't have a great quarter, well, that is enough so that the stock really didn't crash after that. If you look at the chart, this is when they reported right here, the little red candle. So the next day they actually went up slightly. The day after that, they actually, went down a couple dollars, and now they're actually rebounding since the market has a lot of momentum currently. All right, so overall, the company didn't do great. It's more of an average quarter, and the stock hasn't really moved much from it. So what we've learned based on this information is that if we extrapolate that to MGM, we're probably not going to see extreme moves either way. The stock is probably not going to go from 48 to 55, but at the same time, it's probably not going to crash down to 40 or 38 where it used to be before Q2, right? It's probably going to vary maybe by a couple dollars, maybe go down to the previous support/resistance at 44, right? But it's probably not going to either crash or skyrocket after the earnings. So when we look at the options, I like to do often put spreads on these and try to put it just under where I think it's going to go down to. Now, if you want to know what's going to happen to the Wynn so you can prepare accordingly, you can look at the Las Vegas Sands, which both companies are heavily focused on Macau. So if you look at their Q2 and Q3 earnings, well, you'll see that the Las Vegas Sands reported $855 million from their Macau operations in Q2, and they only reported $616 million in Q3. That's a fairly steep decline. That's a big miss. And this miss was actually confirmed by the analysts, right? So on EPS, they missed by 74%, and on revenue, they missed by 29%. So this was a very, very disappointing quarter for the Las Vegas Sands, and we can kind of expect that it's probably going to be fairly similar for the Wynn. Now, the difference is that the Wynn also has casinos in Las Vegas, the Wynn itself, right? So is that going to be enough to compensate for the decline in Macau? Well, then if you look at Boyd Gaming, you'll see that probably not. It's probably going to be flat quarter over quarter. So, was the stock punished, right? LVS. Well, it actually was punished in the first day. You saw a decline, but the market is so strong currently, there's such a big rebound that it actually rebounded right after that. So this is very possibly what we're going to be seeing with MGM and with Wynn. They might actually drop for a couple days and then rebound if the market continues to be strong. Of the video, let's look at MGM and Wynn and see if there are plays to be made here. Now, let me give you guys a quiz. Based on the information we found so far, would you guys feel comfortable buying puts or calls on these stock? Personally, I wouldn't, because I don't expect that there are going to be significant moves up or down. It's always possible, but if we're trying to put the odds in our favor, odds are it's probably going to move a little bit, but we don't know which direction, we don't know like how quickly, and it's probably not going to be very, very significant. So for MGM, the numbers I'm looking at, it's been around 48 for a couple of weeks now. Before that, it had been hovering in the 45 range, and then before that, it was at 42. So over the past quarter, it really, really ran up a lot. So I personally don't expect that it's going to go to 55 soon, right? I personally anticipate it's probably going to be in Q1 or Q2 of 2022 when the conventions come back at 100%, and then the room rates are going to be much higher. They're going to have more foot traffic and all of that. So if we look at 45 and 42, well, then you want to go to the options chain. November 12th is next week. And then you can try to figure out, well, which options would actually make sense, right? I would be looking at put spread here. Well, if I look at 45, right, I sell the 45, I get 40 cents, and then I buy the 44. Right now, I would only get 31 cents. Well, that's not really good. That's a 9 cents premium for this $1 spread. It's not good at all, right? Even if it's only for one week, the risk versus reward is totally skewed here. Even if you try to set your order and get a higher premium, in my opinion, it's just not worth it. The risk versus reward is pretty bad. Right, so the analysts are expecting minus 1 cent in EPS, and the estimates for the revenues are 2.48 billion. And then if you look at what they got last quarter, they had generated 2.3 billion in revenues, and their EPS was 14 cents. So can they actually generate that again and beat the expectations? Of course it's possible, but again, the risk versus reward just doesn't make sense. So this is one of the cases where, even though I love playing these stocks, I mean, when you do the research and you look at all the clues and you look at the chart, it just doesn't make sense this time around. So I hope you guys learned a little bit from that. Now, when it comes to Wynn, this is a stock that was heavily beat down and went down to 78 at some point in the past quarter, and now it's back up to 93. Is this stock, based on what's happening in Macau, going to jump to 100, jump to 110 in next week? Again, everything is possible in life, but would you bet your life on it? I personally wouldn't. So unfortunately, this quarter, I think that it's more of a hold for these stocks. I'm not going to be playing either of them. I really like Wynn long term, right? This is a stock that if they can get their hack together, if you look at the long-term chart for this one, I mean, at one point it was in the 150s, it even went up to 200 in 2018. So if they can get Macau back on track, if they can get the US casinos back on track, this is a stock that is completely undervalued, but currently the risk versus reward is just not great. So I hope you guys learned a little bit today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe. It's a new month, so if you want to join Patreon, look at the link below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.